Killer robots aren't science fiction. A push to ban them is growing. Experts in Geneva brainstormed on killer robots, drones, guns, and bombs that decide on their fleet with artificial brains whether to attack and kill, and what should be done, if anything, to regulate or to ban them. It may have seemed like an obscure United Nations conclave, but a meeting this week in Geneva was followed intently by experts in artificial intelligence, military strategy, disarmament, and humanitarian law. The reason for the interest: killer robots, drones, guns, and bombs that decide on their own with artificial brains whether to attack and kill, and what should be done, if anything, to regulate or ban them. Once the domain of science fiction films like Terminator series and Robocop, killer robots, more technically known as lethal autonomous weapon systems, have been invented and tested at an accelerated pace with little oversight. Some prototypes have ever been used in actual conflicts. The evolution of these machines is considered a potentially seismic event in warfare, akin to the invention of gunpowder and nuclear bombs. This year, for the first time, a majority of the 125 nations that belong to an agreement called Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons said they wanted curbs on killer robots, but they were opposed by members that are developing these weapons, most notably the United States and Russia. The group's conference concluded Friday with only a vague statement about considering possible measures acceptable to all. The campaigning to stop killer robots, a disarmament group, said the outcome fell drastically short. What is the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons? Sometimes known as Inhuman Weapons Convention, it is a framework of rules that ban or restrict weapons considered to cause unnecessary, unjustifiable, and indiscriminate suffering, such as incendiary explosives, blinding lasers, and booby traps that don't distinguish between fighters and civilians. The convention has no provision for killer robots. What exactly are killer robots? Opinions differ on an exact definition, but they are widely considered to be weapons that make decisions with little or no human involvement. Rapid improvement in robotics, AI, and image recognition are making such armaments possible. The drones the United States has been extensively in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere are not considered robots because they are operated remotely by people who choose targets and decide whether to shoot. Why are they considered attractive? To war planners, the weapons offer the promise of keeping soldiers out of harm's way and make faster decisions than a human would by giving more battlefield responsibilities to autonomous systems like pilotless drones and driverless tanks that independently decide when to strike. What are the objections? Critics argue it is morally repugnant to assign lethal drones decision making to machines, regardless of technological sophistication. How does a machine differentiate an adult from a child, a fighter with a bazooka from a civilian with a broom, a hostile combatant and from a wounded or surrendering soldier? Fundamentally, autonomous weapon systems raise ethical concerns for society about substituting human decisions about life and death with sensor software and machine processes. Peter Maurer, president of the International Committee of the Red Cross and an outspoken opponent of killer robot, told the Geneva conference. Why was the Geneva conference important? The conference was widely considered by disarmament experts to be the best opportunity so far to devise ways to regulate, if not prohibit, the use of killer robots under the convention. It was the culmination of years of discussion by a group of experts who had been asked to identify the challenges and possible approaches to reducing the threats from killer robots. But the experts could not even reach agreement on basic questions. What do opponents of a new treaty say? Some, like Russia, insist the decision on limits be unanimous, in effect giving opponents a veto. The United States argued that existing international laws are sufficient and that banning autonomous weapons technology would be premature. The chief US delegate to the conference, Joshua Dorosin, proposed a non-binding code of conduct for use of killer robots, an idea that disarmament advocates dismissed as delaying tactic. Franz Stefan Gady, a research fellow at International Institute of Strategic Studies, said the arms race for autonomous weapon system is already underway and won't be called off anytime soon. Is there conflict in the defense establishment about killer robots? Yes, even as the technology becomes more advanced, there has been reluctance to use autonomous weapons in combat because of fears of mistakes, Gady said. Can military commanders trust the judgment of autonomous system weapons? Here, the answer at the moment is clearly no and will remain so far the near future, he said. The debate over autonomous weapons has spilled into Silicon Valley. In 2018, Google said it would not renew a contract with the Pentagon after thousands of its employees signed a letter protesting the company's work on a program using AI to interpret images that could be used to choose drone targets. The company also created new ethical guidelines prohibiting the use of its technology for weapons and surveillance. Others believe the United States is not going far enough to compete with rivals. In October, the former chief software officer for the Air Force, Nicholas Chalian, told the Financial Times that he had resigned because of what he saw weak technological progress inside the US military, particularly the use of AI. He said policymakers are slowed down by questions about ethics while countries like China press ahead. Where have autonomous weapons been? There are not many verified battlefields examples, but critics point to a few incidents that show technology's potential. In March, UN investigators said a lethal autonomous weapon system had been used by government-backed forces in Libya against the militia fighters. A drone called Kargu, made by a Turkish defense contractor, tracked and attacked the fighter as they fled a rocket attack. According to the report, they left unclear whether any human controlled the drones. In 2020, war in Nagorno-Karabakh, Azerbaijan fought Armenia with attack drones and missiles that loiter in the air until detecting the signal of an assigned target. What happens now? Many disarmament advocates said the outcome of the conference had hardened what they described as a resolve to push for a new treaty in the next few years, like those that prohibit landmines and cluster munitions. Dan Kaiser, an autonomous weapons expert at PAX, a Netherlands-based peace advocacy group, said the conference failure to agree to even negotiate on killer robots was really plain signal that a CCW isn't up to the job. Noel Sarkle, an AI expert and chair of International Committee for Robot Arms Control, said the meeting had demonstrated that a new treaty was preferable to further convention deliberations. There was a sense of urgency in the room, he said, that if there is no movement, we are not prepared to stay on this treadmill. Thank you.